Hey, everybody, welcome in. It is time for Southeastern Rewind's Tell Me More. Hey, I'm David Sommers with the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller, answering 5 questions from the latest Studcast, now on Ron's new home on YouTube. The 5 questions on this edition of Tell Me More come from Studcast episode number 16. It's called Fabulous Phoenix, and you can find it at tnstud.com, and you can also find it at Southeastern Rewind on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell to get reminders on when the greatest stories in wrestling will be dropped on YouTube, and be sure to tell your friends about Southeastern Rewind. Hey, Stud, it gets bigger every day, and listen, a new record has been set on Southeastern Rewind with the most recent edition, which was that big USA 1 hour that you just got on there.
Yes, it is, man. Wow. A big, impressive number, man. Good start to our beginning of running one of the company's programs in sequence. And it's one of my companies. It's actually the last company I had, USA Championship Wrestling out of Knoxville. It was USA episode 1, and we're going to be running episode 2 the following Sunday, this next coming Sunday, and every Sunday is going to be another drop of one of the USA programs. So fans need to get ready for that, and we're going to be doing reviews, Les and I, of these programs 3 or 4 days after the show, maybe 5 days sometimes. We've got so much going now on YouTube that kind of hard to get everything done. But and this one is a very good one. This number 16, but number 17, Dave, the one that's coming up next week, the next Tell Me More is a special one. I think it was called Celebration.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were 17 weeks in, and we really got a lot of good people on that one.
Hey, sure, and listen, you've got a lot of folks who are checking out these Tell Me More. It's a podcast, and it's also on YouTube as well. So a lot of folks are checking it out and finding out more stuff, exactly what it's called, Tell Me More. And so they're finding out way more about what happened and maybe behind the scenes parts of episode number 16. So listen, 17 is going to be really fun, and we haven't even gotten this one underway, but don't miss number 17. Let's get you set up with a reminder for that. So I think we're good to go. All right, Stud, anything else you want to talk about? What's happening in the Great Smoky Mountains?
No, man, beautiful day. We had a little bit of a tropical depression that went through. Was a piece of a hurricane, and it's all cleared up, and it's beautiful again. And gosh, we're ready to roll, man. My horse is ready to go.
All right, let's do it. So here we go with question number 1 on episode number 16 from Shirley Davenport. You mentioned traveling to Vancouver. I'm sure you rode every kind of transportation to get to your matches. What was the strangest form of transportation in your memory? That's a lot of years to think about. So what was
it? Yeah, I guess there is, man. When you start talking about transportation, the first thing that comes to my mind was Japan, because when you go to Japan, you get every form of transportation, except for a helicopter. I don't think we were ever on a helicopter there, but you take planes. You took planes in Japan. You took trains in Japan. You rode buses sometimes. You rode ferries, man, where they drive the cars on board and everything else. You were in taxis. I mean, it was like, wow. You're always, and sometimes you would do 3 or 4 of those in one day.
Wow.
You'd
Okay.
get up at 3 a.m, and you'd get on a bus, and that would take you to the airport. And then you'd have a flight, and you get off the flight and onto another bus that would take you to a ferry, and the bus would pull up onto the ferry, and then you would get off, and you'd be picked up that night by a taxi that would take you to the building. It was like, wow, it was crazy, man. So, gosh, I guess, and she's asking here about the strangest form. I got one that really sticks out in my mind is one of the trips in Japan in which we took two trains. We took the bullet train early in the day, which was just glorious, a magnificent way to travel, 200 plus miles an hour, 180 to 200. And you didn't know you were moving. It was the smoothest train I was ever on. Just a phenomenal. All the chairs reclined back, Dave, and you could sleep in them.
Oh, cool. Wow.
You know,
yeah.
It was just, but we were in the first class section because the wrestling promotion was doing great, and they wanted to get us the best we could get in transportation. But we got off of that train, and I think we took a bus for a couple of hours, and we got on another train, and that train, we went from the best in the world to the worst in the world.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I don't know really how to tell this story. It's a little bit. I hope fans can forgive me because I got to get a little bit definitive about things on this train. But this train, it was horrible. It had the worst seats. Everybody was crammed together. It rocked back and forth. It was slow. It didn't move very fast, especially you get off the bullet train, you get on one that's going 45 miles an hour. It's like, wow, what are we doing here, right?
So is it one of those situations where you're stuck in there like sardines?
Oh, yeah, packed in.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to go to the bathroom, right?
Oh.
So now when you go to the bathroom on the bullet train, wow, it's like walking into a first-class hotel bathroom.
See,
right?
the bullet train is like an airplane on the ground, but not so much the case with this particular train.
This train is like a motorcycle on the ground.
Oh no, okay.
And a slow motorcycle at that.
Yeah.
So I get up to go to the bathroom, and there's a door there, and I open the door. And you're not going to believe this, Dave. People probably are going to go, wow, this ain't possible. But when I opened the door, there was a hole in the floor of the train, about 18 inches across.
Oh, no. It was not that kind of hole.
Yeah. That was it. There was no toilet. It was a hole.
So you could watch the ground moving below you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you were doing number one, you could stand there and see the tracks underneath you.
Yeah.
And if you were doing number two, you better have good balance.
Because you had to squat all the way down.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And your butt might end up in that hole down there, man. And you didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the cleanest thing around the hole either. It was like. Wow, it was culture shock in a way, man. You went from being on the finest train in the world to the worst in the world in about 2 hours time. So that's kind of my story about that. I got to tell you one story here though about the Funks in in Japan, who were there all the time,
right?
And they were all the time messing with the Japanese people. They were extremely recognizable. They'd been there for so long. They were in every magazine. When you were in the train terminals, the airplanes, the airports, you would buy these magazines, and I would flip them open, and there's Terry and Junior in there doing something, right?
Right.
And I'm like, how in the hell do you guys get in these magazines, man? Oh, well, we're over here, Ron. That was the deal, right? So we fly into some town. I can't remember where it was, obviously, but when we got off, Terry's in the front of the airplane, first class kind of, and Junior's way in the back of the airplane. And they're usually set together, and I couldn't figure out, when we got on, what the hell is Junior doing in the back?
Right.
Because a lot of the other guys were in the back.
Yeah.
So when we get off. Terry stands up in the front. As soon as the plane pulls up to where the little chute comes out so you can deplane,
right?
He jumps up and he opens up the overhead compartment and he starts screaming. He goes, my hat, my hat, and and the Japanese people, Americans were so big and so huge, and they didn't know what he was saying. They all just stopped. They froze the whole plane, and I'm in the back there, kind of with Junior, and Terry goes, I got to get my hat. He's looking up in the top, his cowboy hat, right? He's lost his hat. And then he looks back in the back at Junior, and he screams, Junior! He goes, I lost my hat. And he pantomimes, pointing to his head, my hat, I can't find my hat. And so then he says to the Japanese, he says, look for it. He's got him. He says, look for my hat. So he has all the Japanese on the plane instead of deplaning, and we're stuck in the back, man. It's hot on the plane.
Yeah.
And he's got all the Japanese looking under the seats and up in the overhead bin. They're looking for Terry's hat.
Wow.
Okay. So meanwhile, while they're searching for Terry's hat, Terry disappears off the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, Junior says he says, he's gone. He's gone. Get off. He starts waving them to get off, right?
Right.
So the Japanese file off the plane, and we get off the plane, and Junior's just this straight face, man, like, God, Terry lost his hat. Maybe he lost his hat. So we go down to where you get the bags, right? And you got the little carousel, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this is 1983. Mm-hmm. The carousels, not every place had them in America. The Japanese were pretty far ahead of us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So the carousel cranks up. You know how the carousel sits there, and then when they start putting the bags on, bang, they push a button and it starts rolling, right?
Right.
So now all the Japanese are all around the carousel. They're waiting on the bags, and somebody in the back there pushes the button, right, to start the deal. And the very first thing came through the little, you know how they have the little flaps there, the little black flaps?
Oh, yeah.
The bags, it float by. So the very first thing that came out on the carousel was Terry Funk laying on his back with his cowboy hat over his face.
Oh, my God.
And they popped. You talk about the Japanese popping, man. And he rode the carousel all the way around the deal, back into back in the inside and back around again. He rode the carousel probably 3 times, man, while they were getting their bags on.
Well,
I was like, oh, boy.
Did they know Terry Funk or Dory Jr., or were they just fascinated because they were just crazy Americans?
They were. It was a little of both. I mean, like I said, they were in all these magazines, and they'd been on television there for years and years as wrestlers, and they were the best known American wrestlers in Japan by far. And so they had some notoriety, but a lot of them didn't know who they were, and they were just they were freaked out.
Right.
They were looking at each other, and they didn't know how to laugh. They didn't know whether to laugh or not laugh. Right. He might get mad. They were looking at him like, he might get mad if we laugh. It was fun.
And you're
Shirley, I think that's probably my worst, strangest form of transportation in my memory. The worst is that little dirty train somewhere in Japan.
All right, so no rickshaw involved over in Southeast Asia anywhere.
No, man. You didn't see many rickshaws. I don't think the rickshaws were big time in Japan. They had so many cars. They had everything, man. I never saw very many rickshaws over there. But and everything they had was beautiful. Their cars. They were selling Nissans and cars that you'd never see in America. Mm-hmm. I mean, big luxury cars.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. I'd get in them like, what the hell kind of car is this, man? It's a Nissan. Nissan. I go, no, it ain't a Nissan. Why don't we get these in America?
I know, right?
So crazy stuff when you're traveling somewhere else in the world.
And you're trying to convince us that Terry Funk caused a scene at an airport in Japan.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine that?
I know, right?
Someday I'll tell a bigger and better one, causing a scene. I mean, a real scene.
All right, good stuff, stud. All right, here we go. Bobby Davis has got question number 2. Bobby says, you talked about your father's angle with a big guy from the crowd. Did you ever do an angle similar to that? Did you ever do an angle similar to that?
Yeah, so I think in this number 15, I talked about this angle that Dad worked. It was a phenomenal angle. It drew the biggest crowd maybe in the history of Phoenix wrestling, and it took about 10 weeks, maybe close to 3 months to really play out to the very end of it. But he had this big guy that started out sitting in the crowd, and then he would get up and get in Mike DiBiase, who was the Arizona Champion's way. He sit on the aisle right next to where the heels entered the ring, and every week for a few weeks he'd step out in front of DiBiase like he was trying to stop him. Right? And that turned into eventually putting this big, huge guy in the ring on TV and against other guys, and he knocked out 2 wrestlers 2 weeks in a row. Well, it was a tremendous angle. Finally, Dad says, we're going to give you the shot. Dad was the promoter there at that time. He wasn't wrestling. And so he takes it. And by the big man, this guy was probably 6'8", probably weighed 350.
Wow.
He was a monster. He was a monster.
Wow.
So just so that anybody that didn't hear the show, they get an idea of what Bobby was his name, Bobby Davis. So Bobby's question was, did I ever do anything similar to that? And now, Dave, in our Studcaster we're in now, and we're up there in the 200s. That I can think real quickly of 2 angles.
I can too. Literally within the last 3 or 4 Studcast.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Two of them. Not that angle, not an exact angle of that. Actually, it wasn't. It was similar, but it certainly wasn't copying that angle.
Yeah.
But we had a woman, right?
Oh, right. Yes.
That came out of ringside.
Yeah.
And actually cost Robert a victory of some kind. Did something bad to Rob. That turned out to be Gorgeous George Jr. And then shortly after that, we had a guy that's going to go on to becoming a huge, huge star. But his actual name was Sylvester Ritter. We had him sitting in the crowd, and he actually came to the ring and got in the ring, and he gave might have been Robert again. He gave Robert a neck breaker, man.
Wow. Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of similar in a way. And I don't think we ever did anything after that ever. In all the years we were Southeastern in Knoxville, that involved anybody coming out of the crowd.
Right.
But Bobby, I guess that's the answer to your question. There was a couple of times, and I might not have even remembered both of these had it not been that it's oddly enough, it's pretty much right in our time frame, man, where we are with Studcast. The real Studcast now. And, we're at 212. So.
Yeah, I think, by the way, that Sylvester Ritter, the junkyard dog, JYD, could probably have been, it was not exactly like what your father had done, but it was certainly, I think, more impactful when it happened with what JYD did after he got into the ring. Of course, nobody knew who he was, and then eventually he became a Hall of Famer. So, wow, what a cool story.
After he left us, he went to Oklahoma, and oddly enough, when Sylvester arrived in Southeastern, there was a junkyard dog there. Norvell Austin.
Yep.
And it's kind of strange that Norvell Austin left just about a week or two before Sylvester Ritter arrived on the scene, and then when Sylvester Ritter, fairly soon after he leaves Southeastern, goes to Oklahoma, it's not long before he becomes the junkyard dog. So, Sylvester Ritter was the junkyard dog, and he did come out of the crowd, sneaked up in the ring when the referee's back was turned, and he wasn't wearing wrestling tights. He was dressed just like an ordinary guy would dress, and pretty good neck breaker on old Rob.
Yeah, that definitely made an impact on what was happening at Southeastern. All right, so let's go to number 3, and that's Larry Johnson. You mentioned Mike DiBiase. And matter of fact, you were just talking about him, the father of Ted DiBiase. You mentioned Mike DiBiase and a couple of others your father had working for him in Arizona. Who were some of the other stars there?
Gosh, man, before we just breeze right over Mike DiBiase. Mike DiBiase was a tremendous wrestler. Wow, great athlete, good body, great interviewer. He was the real deal, man, and his kid became the real deal too. But Mike DiBiase was Dad's champion. I think the entire time we were in Arizona, I don't know that DiBiase ever lost a match. But there were some other stars there, though. Wow. And Dad had these guys that traveled with him, that went with him when he changed territories and he got ready to build a new territory. He'd just contact basically the same crew. I think I call them in this program, this number 16, his soldiers, because it was time to go to war, man. He would bring in his soldiers, and they would start building these dead territories. And one of those guys was Sputnik Monroe, who we talked about quite a bit, right? In fact, we just talked about him recently here on some of these archive studcasts, way back in the teens, early teens numbers.
Yeah.
So you got Sputnik Monroe. Don Carson was one of those guys, young at this point in his career, darn good worker. Another guy from down in your part of the country, Dave, that used to travel with Dad. He started with him in Memphis. He went to Australia with me in the same crew that I was in '73. And he was a small guy, but wow, what a great worker he was, and people loved him, was Greg Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
So Greg Peterson was in that Tucson territory. Don Carson was there. And then there was another wrestler, one of the original fat men in wrestling. I guess it'd be, I hate to put it bluntly, but he was fat. He was pretty good size. He was one of the first guys over 300 pounds, but he was only about 5'10". So he was extremely fat, but he came from the same city that I was born in, Dyersburg, Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
He was trained when my dad was trained. He was trained when Lester was trained. He was trained by Charlie Carr, the same guy that trained my dad and Lester and me and Rob. He went on to become a big star in wrestling. He was big and fat, but he could move. He had speed for a big guy, and that guy's name, his actual name was George Harris, but they called him the Baby Blimp.
Oh, wow.
And he was truly a blimp, man. He was a big guy. So the territory was full of pretty darn good talent, but the guy, the man, and that whole group there that really lit up Arizona, besides Mike DiBiase, was the guy that worked against him most of the time, and that was Jose Lothario. And Jose Lothario trained the
Shawn Michaels was one of them.
That's it.
Yeah.
That man escaped me right away.
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels, man. And he trained a whole lot of other wrestlers. Jose was a tremendous talent. He was Mexican, and he was in a part of the country that had a lot of Mexican fans. He was a baby face. He was a fantastic worker, had tremendous fire in the ring. And, they would go crazy for him there. They just absolutely loved him in Arizona. And he lived with us. He lived in the home with us, him and his wife and his dog. He had a little dachshund, one of the little weenie dogs, right?
Right.
Yeah. And and they actually lived with us in Tucson for about 6 months. The time we were in Tucson when I was in the 8th grade, and another little side story here. My mom loved this little dog that Lothario and his wife owned, and they called the dog Bieco.
What? Okay? Called it what?
Bieco. Spanish word. Right?
Okay.
So mom and dad, they couldn't wait till we moved back and we got on the farm. We went back to the farm in Mississippi, and they got a dachshund just like Bieco.
Okay. Right.
And dad had that dog would do anything for him. He would sit her up, and she would sit straight up. Being like a weenie dog, it was unusual to see a dog that big be able to sit herself up. And he would put cigars in her mouth and put hat on her head, sunglasses on her, take pictures with her, right? I mean,
right.
So, and then finally, Jose, he visited us one time, and Dad says to the dog, he calls the dog, he says, "Hey, Bieco, come here." And Jose goes, he says, "What are you calling her?" He says, "It's a female dog, right?" And then Dad says, yeah, it's a little female dog, yeah. And he goes, "Do you know what Bieco means?" Dad says, "No, I mean, you called your dog Bieco." He goes, and he says, no, he says, "My wife named that dog." And he says, "Bieco means old man." So your dog is old man.
All right. Hey, I want to throw back just for 1 second to Greg Peterson. Listen, I remember seeing this guy wrestle so many times in the Houston County Farm Center in Dothan, and I don't recall him ever being in the main event, but he was an exciting wrestler. It didn't matter if it was the first match of the evening. That guy, and a lot of young folks were like, "Oh, that's the wrestler I would want to be like." But he was extremely skilled in the ring.
Oh, he was really, really great. And I remember when I came down there and started in 1978 and opened up the territory as Southeastern, I got him to work for me a couple of times. And one night I booked him with me. Now, he was very short, remember? He was probably only 5'2", 5'3".
Yeah.
There I was at 6'9".
Right.
And I was so much bigger than he was. And I remember going on TV. I was a heel and trying to get heat. And I remember there was a new song out that just came out that fit the thing perfectly. And when I finished talking about what I was going to do to the little guy, I started singing that short people got
Randy Newman's Short People. Yes. You didn't.
Oh, boy. They hated me. They booed me so bad in the studio. Probably because my singing wasn't too good, but the song choice was perfect.
I can't imagine your singing not being great, stud. Okay. All right, good stuff. That Greg Peterson, man, he was a ball of fire. All right, question number 4 from Charles Simmons. You talked about wrestling former NWA champion Gene Kiniski in St. Louis. Do you have a single memory of that match that stands out for you? And how long ago would that have been?
Oh, man, that was 1973.
Wow.
It was way back, probably the fall, maybe the opening match for St. Louis. They closed down in the summertime because Sam Muchnick, the promoter and the president of the NWA, he didn't want to compete with the St. Louis baseball team, the Cardinals.
Right.
So he wouldn't even run wrestling in the summer. So he would start up when baseball was finished, basically. And I remember being booked with Gene Kiniski in the main event in 1973, first batch back after the summer season was over in St. Louis. And wow, Gene Kiniski was a powerhouse. I mean, he was a professional football player in the Canadian League, and an excellent one at that, and a darn tough guy. Wow, he had the flat top haircut and he just looked rugged, man. And he was rugged. He was really, really good. So and I don't know that I talked about this one in number 15, but she's right. I did wrestle Gene Kiniski, and it was a real honor, Dave, because I wrestled so many world champions. I don't know. I've wrestled Luthez. I've wrestled Pat O'Connor. I wrestled Gene Kiniski. I wrestled Dory Funk Jr. I wrestled Jack Briscoe. I wrestled Terry Funk.
Harley
I
Race.
wrestled Harley Race.
Yeah.
I wrestled Ric Flair.
Yeah.
I mean, I got an opportunity to wrestle so many world champions.
Yeah.
And I think she has something about the memory, or Charles. I guess this guy's is a gentleman named Charles.
Yeah.
A memory I have of that match.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, cool. And, normally I'd have to sit and take a long time, but I did something in that match that I had never done before, and I did very few times after that. And Gene was such a great wrestler, and he was so big and strong. He could hold you up. It didn't make any difference what angle your body was or whatever. He was just immensely strong, and he called a spot during the match. He said to bill me, which I had him in the corner. That meant I was going to put my arm under his left arm, and I'm going to flip him in the air to the opposite side of the ring. He says, bill me and flying head scissor me.
Okay.
And so I billed him across the ring, and then the flying head scissor is you run, and instead of like a drop kick where you would kick the guy in the face, you get your body, you push your body and throw your body into the air, the height of his head. He was about 6'5". He was a tall guy.
Wow.
And you wrap your legs around his head, and then you fly away from him and hang on to his head, and it throws his body across the ring.
Yeah. Right.
Not many people do it. Not many people could do it. And then I was like real proud that, like, wow, that was really good, man. I did that pretty good. And then we hooked up again, and he said one tackle, which means he's going to run into me and hit me. Drop down, which the second time he comes off the ropes, I'm going to drop down, leapfrog me. That means when he comes off again, I'm going to jump over him. And then he said, then head scissor me.
Wow. Holy.
He's running.
Yeah.
Now he's not standing in the corner.
Yeah.
He's running.
Yeah.
When he comes, right? And I remember going up, man, just like I'd done it 100 times. Man, I flew up there when he came off for the head scissor. I was right up there. And what you could do is when you hooked his head, he was so strong that you could extend your body out so that your body was straight out with the height of his head.
Wow.
And then you would take him over with your legs, and sometimes you could almost send the guy right out of the ring.
Wow.
So that's it, Charles. That's what I remember about the match with Gene Kiniski, man.
All right, Gene was not the champion at the time, but it sounds like Gene was, and obviously a little bit older than you were. So, but was he like calling the match as you were going? So it was kind of you, out of respect, he gets the calls on here's what we're going to do in the ring.
Yeah, usually always the heel called the match. He was the heel. But since he was the heel and the former world champion, he definitely called the match.
Yeah, it's a little seniority.
And I'd only been wrestling 3 years.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I was just lucky to be there, man, and to get the training and to get the opportunity to wrestle with a guy like that. Pretty good deal. I actually saw him wrestle my father in Atlanta in 1966 when I was a senior in high school for the world title.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you obviously had a good deal of respect for this guy once you stepped into the ring with him.
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
I certainly did.
Okay. All right. So the final question from Daryl Swanson. Who did you wrestle in Vancouver when you went there? And he says, we just talked about him. Was it Gene Kiniski that you wrestled? He was very famous in that part of Canada.
He was a superstar in that part of Canada. I think he played on the Canadian Canucks or whatever that football team was called, the Canadian football team.
Right.
And he was the star. He was the biggest star, He's like a linebacker or something. And wow, he was it was tough to handle. But crazy. This is crazy. I went to Vancouver, but I didn't go to Wrestle. And I went there owning a hockey team.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And what happened when you owned a hockey team, even the minor leagues, they always had the National Hockey League meeting every year, and it changed cities. It was always a city that was within the league, and they changed the city every year. And even the minor league teams all went to those conventions because you could pick up players from other teams that weren't good enough to be on the big team that you might be able to do some business with. You might be able to win some games with. You went there and you introduced yourself to guys who may be able to help you. And I met quite a few, man, in those days. And because I was a wrestler, it made it even easier for me. The general manager for Edmonton's team, and he was in charge of the greatest hockey player of all time. And so Wayne Gretzky, man. Wow.
Oh, yeah, there's a name we've heard a time or two. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
Yeah.
I actually got to see him play live in Los Angeles and meeting another GM for the Los Angeles Kings.
Wow.
So, you went to these meetings in Vancouver. It happened to be in Vancouver that year. And I got to say, Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities I have ever seen in my life. Absolutely gorgeous. It was summertime. I sat in an outside cafe, and there was a huge bay right beside the cafe. And on the far side of the bay was a 10 or 12,000 foot mountain that had people snow skiing on it.
Wow.
You're sitting down there in 85-degree temperature having a beer and watching people ski on the mountain across from you.
How cool is that? And then back to the topic of transportation real quick. No snowmobiles to get to the matches or meetings?
Oh, man, it's summertime. Thank goodness.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they always had their meetings in summer because, they were always playing in the wintertime. They didn't have time to have meetings. They had games every night or every third night or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you went to these deals in the summertime. Went to Buffalo, New York 1 year. So many different places, man, during my hockey days. And Daryl, I didn't go to Vancouver to wrestle Kiniski, but I did go to wrestle some hockey talent. That's what I went there to wrestle for.
All right, cool stuff. All right, and then Stud, let's do it one more time. A reminder about next week. Episode number 17 is going to be really special, so don't forget that. And then tell us once again what's coming up this weekend on Southeastern Rewind on YouTube.
Oh, man, it's all happening now. This program that we're recording here is obviously going to be coming on in the next couple of days. And then we're looking for Les Thatcher and I to do a review of that first USA wrestling show before the end of the week. Mm-hmm. And then next Sunday will come another brand new episode of USA Wrestling, episode number 2. And it's got some great wrestlers on it. The guys that wrestled on the first card are all off for the second episode. And it's all new talent on that second episode. So fans that saw half of the crew or even less than half the crew are going to see even more, even better talent, most of it. So,
that's cool.
It's just, it's really great. I'm really enjoying this YouTube experience, man. The numbers are just unbelievable. I want to thank everybody that has subscribed. If you haven't, please go ring the bell and get ready because the bell's going to ring for you when we put up something new, and there's going to be more and more new things coming.
All right, and one more reminder, because this is until further notice, every Sunday afternoon at what time?
3 o'clock Eastern time.
3 Eastern, 2 Central. Look for something really hot and in the next number of weeks from USA TV. Hey, Stud, good job. That was a lot of fun today.
Well, thank you, man. I always enjoy it, and great job as usual. I really appreciate everybody out there that listens to it. I got to say that this Tell Me More shows, Dave, is becoming extremely important, and numbers are really, really outstanding. I think a lot of fans like listening to these and finding out these stories that I didn't get to tell in the actual studcast, and I kind of enjoy being able to complete the story, man. To tell them more. It's a great name for it. Tell me more, and that's what we're here to do.
Absolutely. Of course, you say you dig deep on the Studcast, you dig a little deeper on these. And there it is, another Southeastern Rewinds Tell Me More, where the stud answers 5 questions. This one about Studcast number 16, the original number 16, which is now on Ron's new home on YouTube. And, of course, you can find it on tnstud.com. And remember to find Southeastern Rewind on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell to get reminders on when the greatest stories in wrestling will be dropped on YouTube on Southeastern Rewind. And be sure to tell your friends about Southeastern Rewind. They'll definitely thank you for it. Hey, for Ron Fuller, I'm David Summers, and we'll be back soon with another Tell Me More.